The Disclosed Ramblings of a Schizophrenic. Podcast 2. Entitled Labels. The patient's chair I was sat in was surprisingly comfortable, although when I walked into the psychiatrist's office I thought it looked like a small torture machine with extra padding. Leaning back into the soft realm of cushioned bliss, I relaxed my eyes from the glare of the artificial office light that hung high above me. This little moment of relaxation was broken by the deep voice of the psychiatrist booming out from behind his desk about 7 feet in front of me. "You've been on antipsychotics and other medication for years now. Isn't this proof enough that you have some form of condition and long-term problem? Why do you need a formal diagnosis? You already have a preliminary one." The date is August the 9th, 2007, and I've already been sat in this chair now for 2 bloody hours. My legs are beginning to seriously cramp and I am fucking gagging for a cigarette. To top it all off, I am not in the mood for this argument or debate again. Across the desk, which acts as an artificial battlefield of wits, we already have explored the detailed parts of my life, social and personal problems, my medication, and what coping strategies I have in place. However, I do get the distinct feeling that he knows I am not going to let him in completely into my world or mind, as my mental defence goes into automatic overdrive at the first sign of a mental health professional. This will be the 10th assessment that I have had in the last 4 years, and many more are yet to come as I move into my mid-20s. As a rule, I am extremely stubborn. I do not trust mental health professionals completely, although I have to admit each one I've met in an assessment circumstance have been pleasant, polite, professional and welcoming. I can't ask for more than that, can I? Opening my eyes and lowering my head, I look directly at the psychiatrist and give a slightly aggressive response. "You and I live in different worlds, mate. You are content in your politically correct and artificial dream world that is the NHS, the National Healthcare Service for all you non-Brits. Remember, you have tons of HR support and more equality and diversity training than you can fit in your head. I live in reality, mate. Not in the public sector illusion of equality and diversity." Looking back in hindsight, that statement of "I live in reality, mate" is slightly ironic, as the very reason I was there is because I have a problem of identifying what reality is in the first place. This just adds another level of reality, really, and social structure. And to be frank, I have got enough to cope with without another plane of reality to add to my collection. As a rule, I refuse point blank to do group therapy sessions. I'm sorry, I work extremely hard to keep a roof over my head and keep a job regardless of the schizophrenia. I do not have time to do the weekly sessions of this stuff. Being sat in a room with others in an equally depressing and agitated situation, pouring my heart out is not something I'm prepared to do. Christ alive, I can't even do that in private to a mental health professional, let alone a room of random people who are themselves suffering horribly. Okay, so I normally have to change my job every 14 to 18 months, take a quick break, and rely on firmly based friendships and family more often than a regular person would. But I'm determined to live independently, even if there is an isolated, insular little life. As far as I can see, this should be encouraged. Well, at least the independent living part. Due to my medication, I can't drive. It causes me to be extremely drowsy, and I am not taking the risk of being behind a wheel. Also, my medication changes regularly. It goes this way, that way, increase, decrease, slow release, high release. I don't want to drive until I'm confident I can cope with the side effects. Once, my boss asked me a major question. "Why do you have to take the train to go to that meeting and leave here earlier? I really need you here for as long as possible to help me. I need to get this report done. Can't you just bloody drive there and use the company car? I thought you had a license." Psychiatrists and social workers, as they always do, point out that under UK equality and disability law, I don't have to disclose this information. And anyway, why the fuck does he need to know? Well, welcome to the real nasty world of private companies and employment outside of the state. If my new boss asks a question, and I tell him it's none of his business, which is not a good way to start a new job or get a good reference for the next one, he's not going to be happy. The law is there, but how do you monitor it? I'm sure if I complained, I would get nowhere, and to be honest, it'd be a pointless expense and stress. Without the label of having a diagnosis, I would have to give a generic situation to my employer and tell him what's going on. I hear voices in and outside of my head, and I'm not sure if they're real or not. I see things. I'm also bouncing between living in a constant dream and in stark brutal reality, or in the middle grey zone, which is the majority of the time. I don't fit neatly into society, and I have anger and emotional social issues, and hence why I won't be going to the office Christmas Hanukkah party this year. And when you ask me a question, and sometimes my speech and response is distorted and confused, schizophrenia is likely to be the cause. Sometimes I can look distant, and this is because I am. As a result, I take these strong antipsychotic medications so I can live more firmly based in reality and keep in general good control. But these are really strong and they can make me drowsy. And because I'm drowsy, I don't want to drive. I'm sorry. This is obviously way too much information to disclose, although I'm sure some people do. If I just say, I hear voices and take pills, and that makes me drowsy, I can't drive, well then, the employer does become quite scared and thinks I'm a freak or safety risk. Oh God, what the hell have I employed? Serious baggage here. And, anyway, I don't want the person who employs me, and who I have to see 5 days of the week, knowing about the inner parts of my reality and mind. For a start, he may have no experience in mental health, and on one occasion I am certain I was laid off because I told my employer that I had a mental health condition, even though 2 weeks before I'd been given an excellent first appraisal, and the reference was great. When I got the diagnosis, I could say, I have schizophrenia, and I'm on medication for that. But from this point to anybody, you can recommend them on some materials so they understand the circumstances. There are plenty of areas in the internet that give good, concise advice and explanations. I'm sure there must be some for employers of people with schizophrenia. Information is the key here, and mental health charities constantly spend millions of pounds giving out information and bringing the stigma into the public eye. But if you have no real diagnosis, I feel like you're almost left in a limbo. You can't recommend colleagues, friends, or anyone else who needs to know anything materials because you don't really know yourself. This can cause a lot of confusion for you in your life, and it isolates you even more. It means you're not open about it. It can be a real problem for you when you're looking for advice and support and basically have to self-diagnose online. If you don't want to be involved in the happy clappy meetings or support centres, you're quite honestly fucked. Should I look up schizophrenia or borderline personality disorder? There's so many to choose from. In my opinion, which is quite radical, all mental health staff and professionals who say or moan, it's difficult to diagnose at your age and you don't need a label, should not be tolerated by the schizophrenic community. After dozens of sessions and assessments, I was stuck in the same limbo, even though they were the ones who wanted me to have the assessment so they can give me a diagnosis. Basically, they completely wasted my time and effort. If they are unable to give a preliminary idea and then work on top of that in a couple of sessions afterwards, maybe over a couple of years, and then give you a final response, to me that's fair enough. But this didn't. It jumped between 2 preliminary diagnoses which confused the hell out of me. And I'm sorry, but the National Health Service should pull the plug on anybody who thinks like this and spend the money on psychologists doing studies into improvement, social care, anything that helps the schizophrenic community. I was given a diagnosis after about 8 preliminary ones with various names. Sometimes it was the same one. Once it was something I couldn't even spell. Now I have some boundaries to work in. I could seek some self-help. As I said, I don't want to get involved in the community groups. I do not feel comfortable reading self materials that are generally designed for a specific diagnosis if I don't have the diagnosis to go with it. What happens if I'm reading the wrong stuff? I am not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a doctor. I don't know why I have. That's their job. They're supposed to tell me. It can also make you feel less alone once you've got a bit of a diagnosis. You can go onto YouTube and hear other people's experiences, and sometimes you can relate to them, even if it's only a little bit. I'm not the only one, and there are others out there. And with this comes a slight sense of confidence and almost self-respect. I am what I am, and I can get help to control it. I have a label, and I'm not willing to rip it off just yet.